Mary Lawson and her young nephew fled through the night, accused of stealing a horse that had been hers long before the Crow family laid claim to it. Jed Crow, son of the most powerful rancher in the county, arrived at Samuel Hart's barn, certain his word alone would decide their fate. But Samuel had one day, one plan, and one shot to turn the tables on a family that ruled the valley through fear. And just wait until you hear how this standoff ended, and why justice at last came riding in at full gallop. Samuel Hart, a widower whose silver hair caught the faint glint of the dawn, stirred from a light sleep as the first streaks of morning pushed over the distant ridgeline. The prairie air was dry and sharp. It carried the faint rustle of the cottonwoods and the memory of the night's mountain wind that had howled down the slopes and rattled every loose board on his property. He rose with a heaviness in his joints, pulling on his worn boots, and stepped into the cold stillness of the yard. The world smelled of dust and hay, but there was something else in the air, a tension he couldn't name. His gaze fell on the old barn by the corral, the roofline tilting slightly against the pale sky. That wind could have loosened half the shingles, and if the rafters had given way, he'd have more to fix than he cared to think about. Pushing open the warped barn door, its hinges groaning in protest, Samuel was met with the familiar scent of dry straw. Only this morning it was laced with something unexpected, the soft, almost imperceptible rhythm of human breathing. He froze, eyes narrowing as he scanned the dim interior. There in the far corner where sunlight barely reached, a woman lay curled on a bed of scattered hay, her arms wrapped protectively around a small boy, 6 years old at most. His face pressed into her shoulder. Her dress was faded and travel-stained, her boots missing their laces. The way she held him wasn't just protective, it was as if she were bracing against the entire world. Samuel's voice, when it came, was sharper than he intended, a reflex honed from years of solitude and wariness. "Who are you, and what in blazes are you doing in my barn?" Inside, though, something in him shifted, a quiet ripple of unease he couldn't explain. He'd seen desperate folks before, but there was something different here. The woman looked up slowly, and in that moment he saw a whole story written in her eyes. Exhaustion etched deep, fear held in check, and beneath it all, a steel resolve that refused to break. When she spoke, her voice trembled, but her words were steady. "Please, we didn't mean any harm. We've been running all night." Samuel was about to ask from whom when the quiet morning shattered. From outside came the sudden thunder of hooves tearing across the hard-packed earth. 3 riders in long, dust-darkened coats swept into the yard, their horses snorting clouds into the chill air. One of them, a broad-shouldered man with a copper beard, swung down from the saddle, boots hitting the ground with a heavy thud. His voice carried like a challenge. "Hart, we know they're here. Hand over the woman and the boy and we'll be on our way." Samuel's jaw tightened, the old stubbornness rising in his chest. He didn't know who these men were yet, but he knew the kind. The sort that rode in with demands and left nothing but trouble behind. A low burn of anger began to build in him, not just at the intrusion, but at the arrogance in their tone. They had no right to step onto his land and speak as though they owned the place, and they certainly had no right to claim the lives hiding in his barn. The copper-bearded man was Jed Crow, a name that carried weight in this county like the shadow of a hawk overhead. Son of Silas Crow, owner of the largest spread of land for 100 miles, Jed didn't need to introduce himself. People recognized him by the set of his jaw, the glint of his rings, and the quiet way conversation stopped when he walked into a room. If his father was the law in these parts, unofficial but absolute, then Jed was the enforcer of that law, the hand that collected what the family decided was theirs. Rumor painted Jed as a man who could walk into a shop, take what he pleased, and leave the storekeeper thanking him for his business. A man whose loans never came with paper, only with the unspoken knowledge that default meant losing more than you borrowed. And though Samuel Hart had lived long enough not to trust rumors, he'd seen enough truth in them to know they weren't just talk. Jed's voice cut through the barnyard stillness, each word sharp and deliberate. "Hart, we know they're here. That woman is Mary Lawson, and the boy's her nephew. She took a horse from our barn and ran. Now, I'm here to bring them back one way or another." The claim came too quickly, too practiced, like it had been rehearsed. Samuel didn't move, letting the silence stretch. That was when he heard Mary's voice from behind him, low, careful, and meant for him alone. "That horse was mine, Mr. Hart. My husband bought him years ago. After he passed, Crow's men came. Said there were debts to be paid. I told them there weren't, but they took the horse anyway, sold him off for next to nothing. When I went looking for him, they said I owed more. I never owed them a penny." Her tone didn't carry the panic Samuel might have expected from someone cornered. There was fear, yes, but it was anchored by something harder, a refusal to let the truth be buried under lies. The boy at her side clutched her sleeve with white-knuckled fingers, his eyes fixed on the ground, as if afraid that meeting Samuel's gaze might somehow make things worse. The words struck Samuel in a place he thought had gone numb. A year earlier, when his wife passed, it had been the bank, not nature or time, that took their home in town and forced him deeper into the hills. He'd seen then how quickly loss could be compounded by those with power, how grief made you easy to strip bare. And now here stood Mary and the boy, caught in that same snare, accused of crimes they didn't commit simply because someone with a bigger ranch and a louder voice said so. But knowledge was one thing, acting on it was another. Samuel's mind turned over the realities with the steady rhythm of a rancher's habit: fences cut in the night, water lines sabotaged, cattle scattered or stolen. His land shared a border with Crow territory for nearly a mile, more than enough room for accidents to happen. Crow's men didn't need to make their threats in words. Everyone already knew how far their reach extended. Jed stepped forward, the gravel crunching under his boots, his expression shifting into the easy grin of a man confident the matter was already settled. "Keep your old bones out of this, Hart. We'll take what's ours and be gone. You don't want their trouble becoming your trouble." Samuel let the words hang in the air. He could almost see the